Well, by now you have heard the news that Russia has made the decision to expel 60 of our staff from that country and also close down our consulate in St. Petersburg. A short while ago, I spoke with our U.S. ambassador to Russia, John Huntsman, who is serving over there. We spoke by phone, and he shared with me a statement which I'd like to read with you. This evening, Ambassador John Huntsman was convoked to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation dubbed 60 of our staff persona non grata, and they now must depart within 7 days. They also ordered the closure of our consulate in St. Petersburg within 48 hours. It's clear from the list provided to us that the Russian Federation is not interested in a dialogue on issues that matter to our two countries. I spoke with him a short while ago, have also spoken with some of his other colleagues who are serving in Moscow. I let Ambassador Huntsman know that the entire State Department and U.S. government stands with our people at Mission Russia. I want to remind you that there is no justification for the Russian response. Our actions were motivated purely by the attack on the United Kingdom, the attack on a British citizen and his daughter. Remember, this is the first time that a weapons-grade nerve agent, Novichok, has been used outside of war on Allied soil. We have not taken these steps lightly. We've taken these steps in concert with our allies across the world. 28 countries now join the United States backing our allies in the decision to have kicked out 153 Russian spies from the various countries. Georgia is the latest country that has joined us in this effort. I believe they announced today that they would kick out one spy, which is significant given that Georgia is in the backyard of Russia. Our ambassador was called into the Russian Foreign Ministry this evening, Moscow time. We're now reviewing the Russian government's note informing us of their response. It appears that Russia has chosen to take the regrettable, unwarranted action to respond to our entirely justified action that I just covered. As I understand it, Russia plans to take the same unjustified actions against 28 other countries that stood in solidarity with the UK. Russia is further isolating itself following the brazen chemical attack. We are still reviewing the details of the Russian action, but let me say again that we reserve the right further to any Russian retaliation against the United States. So we are reading this, we are reviewing it, and we'll respond accordingly. We typically go to Matt first. With Matt, I'd be happy to start taking your questions.
What was that last bit? You reserve the right to do more, is what you said?
Or we reserve the right to respond.
To respond to their response?
Correct.
So in other words, this is not over. This is not necessarily over. We could see an escalation beyond this.
I'm not going to predict anything that could happen, but we certainly have the ability to do so.
And when you say there is no justification for the Russian response,
yeah.
I'm not sure I understand. You guys threw out 60 of their people.
Mm-hmm.
When they made you reduce your diplomatic presence last year, you made them reduce.
Let me explain why I say there is no justification for that response. The United States, in concert with many other countries, made the decision to kick out Russian spies. We don't see this as a diplomatic tit for tat. Russia is responsible for that horrific attack on the British citizen and his daughter. Once again, they have broken the Chemical Weapons Convention. It was a banned substance that they have used, Novichok. We take this matter very seriously. Go ahead.
I wanted to let you finish.
Okay. Thank you. That
like
normally doesn't happen.
There's a first time for everything.
You caught me off guard. They don't need to act like a victim. Russia should not be acting like a victim. The only victims in this situation are the two victims in the hospital in the UK right now. And the people who cannot go into the park, the medical workers, the first responders who are now having to be, be treated and watched carefully because they may have come into contact with that substance.
Are you saying that the American diplomats who are being expelled are not spies under diplomatic cover?
I'm saying that they work for the U.S. State Department. They are our colleagues who have served there with great distinction. I can tell you that Russia did provide us a list of 60 names. We are reviewing that list, and we will respond accordingly.
Right, but you're saying that these that your action was justified, theirs wasn't, because these people aren't the equivalent of who
I think we're forgetting what got us to this place. Their attack. The United States and many other countries chose to respond by kicking out spies. This all begins with Russia's actions, their irresponsible actions, where they are showing that they're not serious about being a cooperative world player.
But surely you expected them to. This is not
Look,
a surprise.
it doesn't surprise us.
Okay.
It doesn't surprise us. But it is not justified. I want to be clear about that.
Hold on, last one from me.
Yeah.
Do you think, so you clearly don't think the number of people being thrown out is reciprocal, is a reciprocal move. What about the consulate in St. Petersburg? Do you think that the closure of that is the equivalent to your closure of their consulate in Seattle? Okay.
I'm not going to equate one with the other. I can say that Russia is choosing through its actions to further diplomatically and also economically isolate itself, not just from the United States, from the world. They have indicated that they would kick out other countries' diplomats who are serving in Russia at this time. Russia clearly is not interested in having good relations with other countries, and that is evident by the actions that they have taken. Andrea, go ahead.
Heather, why haven't we heard from the President of the United States? The last thing we know about his communications with Russia were his congratulatory call to Vladimir Putin when he did not mention this attack. With this being the largest expulsion that we ordered, and now the retaliation.
I have an issue with the premise of your question.
Cold War.
You have only seen the readout, the formal readout that was provided of the call. You do not know the entire content of the call that the president had with Vladimir Putin. So you cannot assume that none of this was in fact brought up. In terms of a so-called congratulatory call, that is something that we do. That is something that past presidents have done. Even you may not like a country, you may have difficulties with a country, but that doesn't mean that you don't pick up the phone and have a conversation. The reality is, whether we like it or not, we have to have a relationship with a government as large and as significant as Russia.
Well, all of the reporting and the readouts and the White House statements have not questioned the fact that he did not raise the subject of this in that call. Are you saying now that he did raise the subject?
I'm not
of this
saying
attack?
that at all. What I am saying, Andrea, is that what you read in a readout does not always cover everything that was stated in a call. You were not on that call. I was not on the call. So I don't think that you can jump to those conclusions.
Do you think that isn't Russia and the rest of the world getting mixed messages about the difference between the president's stated views of the Kremlin and what the administration has done?
I'd say this is a tired storyline. This administration has taken very tough actions against Russia. Not against the Russian people, but against the Russian government. And you have seen that through numerous rounds of sanctions. You've seen that through our actions that we took earlier this week. You've seen that through our actions that we've taken at the United Nations, standing together against Russia and its activities in which it still continues to kill and be responsible for killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians who are living in Syria. Our actions have been extremely tough, but the reality is that we still have to maintain some type of contact with these countries. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I want to go back to a little bit of the questioning of Matt. Like when you talk about that this action was not justified because you took these actions because of the nerve agent that you said Russia used. I mean, essentially, you're asking Russia to just admit that they did it and take their punishment.
Wouldn't
right?
that be the adult thing to do? Wouldn't that be the right thing to do by the world? You break the Chemical Weapons Convention. And that is in place for a reason. That is in place so that countries can be responsible parties and so that they can work together and we can all work together in some sort of peaceful understanding of the kinds of weapons that won't be used against civilians.
I'm not saying
Russia broke with that. Russia broke with that, and so a lot of countries made the decision that they needed to be held responsible and that their spies needed to be held responsible and kicked out.
I'm not saying whether they did or they didn't. I know that there's evidence suggesting that they did, but they're saying that they didn't. So essentially, you're just asking for that. I mean, by saying that, like, this is your punishment and you should take it and not retaliate, you are, in fact, asking them to, admit to something that they say that they did.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with admitting wrongdoing. And we've seen Russia again and again misinform, use disinformation, claiming that little green men went into Ukraine, denying responsibility for the downing of MH17. We don't talk about that much anymore. And I'm referring to the plane that was shot down, killing many innocent civilians over Ukraine. Russia is known for its disinformation campaigns, and I think this is just another one.
I just like one more on the further measures. Do you anticipate, when you say you're not going to rule out, anything, are you talking about, seizing Russian assets, or are you talking about specifically on the expulsions? Because if past practice is that in terms of expulsions, you expel a certain amount, you expect them to expel, with reciprocity, and then other measures or something.
I can just tell you that
separate.
we reserve the right to respond further. We're reviewing our options.
Including more expulsions.
I'm not going to get into specifics about that. This is something that the president, our deputy secretary, General Mattis, others, the entire interagency process can have a conversation about what to do next. And I'm not going to get ahead of any of those conversations that might happen.